Okay, so VG10 Animal Mother had made a video, and you'd asked like a response video, and I planned on making one even before I got to the end of the video because you brought up a lot of good points. Some that I have thought of before, and some that I've kind of visited. Where to start? Um, you mentioned a lot of the stuff, the bolt action rifles, and I think you had a myriad of good ideas there. Um, I I I kind of go for more smaller calibers that are faster. Like I mentioned before, like I kind of have locked myself in, at least right now, to 25-06. I I hunt a lot of pronghorn antelope. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm into that. And honestly, I've thought of getting a 6.5 Creedmoor. I actually have a 243 that I might get rid of so that I can get a 6.5 Creedmoor. I don't know. I I actually, because 25-06 ammunition ebbs and flows, everything since 2020 kind of ebbs and flows if it's not super common. And I actually bought a reloading set, and I want to say it's a Lyman or maybe RCBS. I don't remember. It's packed up. It's in the garage. I rent a garage space. Um, I I also have some projectiles for it. I picked up some 120 grain Nosler partition projectiles, so I should load something up, but I just haven't. And yeah, I'm a big bolt gun fan. When it comes to glass, I'm kind of snobbish. I really like my Swarovski scopes. Um, and you had mentioned you'd mentioned the scout rifle, and I've wanted to visit that so bad over the years. I just haven't, and there's a variety of reasons for that. I feel like if you want something very specific as a scout rifle, you have to go to a gunsmith and drop a lot of money, and it just, yeah, I'm not, not into it. And I find that the selection of long eye relief scopes are almost non-existent. So I I like it. I like the idea. I'd love to be able to pick one up and really run it through its paces. I never have. And I really, if they made like a true, this is going to sound stupid to a lot of people out here, if they made a true rimfire scout rifle, with the backup irons and the forward mounted optic and the ching sling and all that stuff, like I'd really like to try it. I would, because that would be something I could really run and see if I like the concept. You know what I mean? At least that's my opinion, but that's just me. You mentioned shotguns. I'm also kind of snobbish on a shotgun. I like 28-inch, 30-inch barrels, screw in chokes. Usually I actually like over and unders if I can get a single trigger one, and I like semi-autos. I because I've had over the years, and that's just kind of, I'd maybe go with a Benelli pump. I've got a few shotguns, and I'm kind of set up for that. Um, you'd also mentioned like kind of the like talking more with the, I guess, battle rifle or whatever. Um, you'd mentioned 30 carbine. I owned a 30 carbine. I owned an original 30 carbine, which got stolen by a family member, which kind of pisses me off because it's worth a lot of money, but whatever. Like, sometimes it's just good to be done with people. But I I ran into the same problem with that I kind of ran into with 223. It was it was a caliber that was too small for rifle stuff, too big for 22 stuff. I just filled a niche in my world that didn't exist. And also I found that the stock on it was really short and it just didn't work for me. I'm not saying it couldn't be a good gun. I don't know. It didn't give me the fizz. I don't know. That's weird, I know, but you mentioned the Mini 14, and I had a Mini 14. Once again, it was that the caliber was kind of the turn off, and my Mini 14 was super accurate, fed everything really well, but it was really heavy as well. I don't know. So in that case, a guy could go with an AR-15. And I, don't get me wrong, I've thought of going with an AR-15, rather I go buy a used one at the gun shop or get a PSA and build it from there or whatever. And really what I was kind of if I was to do the AR-15 thing, I don't know what I would do for optics. I feel I would have backup irons, a sling, maybe a light, maybe, I don't know. But I think I would go with something with like a 20-inch barrel in like a 223 wild chambering. Then I would kind of do everything well, I think. And if I was a hand loader, Barnes makes like a 70 grain triple shock, which would be a pretty good round for that. Federal makes like some like 63 grain hunting loads. For me, where I am, they break big game into kind of two categories: smaller big game and larger big game. And because of the prevalence, they never used to do that, but because of the prevalence of AR-15s, mule deer and antelope you can take with a AR-15 now, and you still need a 23 caliber or bigger and all this stuff, and the cartridge has to be so long and all this stuff, right? For like elk and stuff like that. And I've also thought of like a high point carbine in 10 millimeter, because one of the handguns I want to get is 10 millimeter. I want to get a Springfield Ronin 10 millimeter. Just because I don't live that far from bear country, so that would be by bear country I mean grizzly country. And you mentioned with concealed carry, and that will be the next gun I get. I got there's something I got to get done that'll take a couple weeks, and then I'll probably scoop up a J-frame Smith. And I actually have a per diem check from some work I did out of town last month, but I haven't cashed yet because that will cover the majority of a J-frame Smith, especially the one I'm looking at. So there's a few options with that. I was actually looking at a model 642. I like that internal hammer, nothing to snag. It's 38, which I think would be pretty effective. However, it's funny that you mentioned 32, because I thought, and I didn't I mean, I still might. I don't know. But I really heavily looked at a J frame, and that was a little hammerless J frame in 32 H&R, because then you could shoot 32 H&R, you could shoot 32 Smith and Wesson, you can shoot 32 ACP, right? Like you can shoot a lot of different things, but 32 H&R gives you an extra shot in a J frame, and I think it's effective, but everybody's kind of like, no, no, you want a 38. So I know some people have told me I want a 357, but that seems like standing there and letting somebody hit you in the hand with a baseball bat. At least that's what I think. Never shot one before, but that's just what I would think. And I know 38's pretty soft shooting. I've shot single shot break action pistols in 38 and Model 10s and stuff like that. So I know it's a pretty soft shooting round, so that's good. But yeah, just you had a lot of good points in your video, and that's kind of some of my ideas, not all of them, but yeah, I like I said, it's funny. You and I, we think a lot alike on a lot of things when it comes to that kind of stuff. Anyway, I'll cut that off there. Everyone, take care.